What is up? Season 2, we're here. We made it. My producer Ed and I are really happy to kick off the new year, 2021. Brand new season, great episodes coming your way, interviews even better. We got new music, we got new everything, and should be a great year for the Too Tall Sports podcast. So happy to have you. Thank you for being a continued listener or a new listener. Love to have you all. So I really appreciate you listening to me and supporting the show. Today, my guest is David Kopp. He's a former teammate of mine for the Long Island Ducks when we played independent ball, and we also played for Team Israel in the World Baseball Classic. So lots of stories with David. We both played professional baseball and coincidentally never played on the same major league organization team before, but played professionally outside of that. So a lot of fun with David today. He's also now the pitching coach for FAU, Florida Atlantic University. He's a Clemson alum, so we talk about his time at Clemson as well. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it today. So as always, you can follow the show at Too Tall Sports Podcast on Instagram. On Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. You can follow me there. If you'd like to email the show, it's tootallsportspodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you would like to watch the show, it's on YouTube. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can subscribe there and you hit the little bell notification to get notified every time we put out an episode. Most weeks, we try to put out an episode every Thursday, so just be prepared for that. And once again, I really appreciate your continued support and enjoy season 2. Let's get it. Too tall. Going crazy. All right, welcome back to another edition of the Too Tall Sports Podcast. My next guest is a friend of the program. We played together for Team Israel in the World Baseball Classic qualifier in 2012. We reunited for the Long Island Ducks back in 2014 for independent baseball, and he was a second-round pick of the St. Louis Cardinals back in 2007 out of Clemson, and he's now the assistant coach at Florida Atlantic University, FAU. His name is David Kopp. What's up, David? How are you?
What's up? No, thanks for having me. This is cool. We reconnected again reached out to you on Instagram and saw you were doing this, and I was like, man, just bring back our conversations as roommates talking about like Joe Rogan and like the podcast. And now here, you're right.
Dude, you were the first person to introduce me to podcasting and Joe Rogan. That was 6 years ago. So imagine now where he is. Yeah.
He just signed is now on Spotify.
Right.
So he's, I don't know what grabbed me on. I mean, he's grabbed everybody, I guess.
Yeah. No, he's obviously got a huge following, and hopefully you can help me get to that level one day.
Yeah. That's the next step. So it's good to reconnect again.
For sure. And I'm glad we got to catch up. Before we get to your career and stuff, and we'll go through David's career and his coaching now, locally in Florida. But as far as 2020 goes for you, what's it been like, personally and professionally, coaching and recruiting? What's it been like for you?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely been a weird time. And a lot of people have said, oh man, 2020 stinks. Like, I can't wait to get to 2021. But that I think for me, it's definitely helped slow things down. Right. I think at first, when we all went into quarantine, you kind of start focusing on the things that matter the most instead of life being so sped up all the time. Things kind of slow down, and you got to spend time with, for me, I met my girlfriend, who I've been with in January is going to be a year. So I met her a little bit before quarantine, but got to spend some time with her to slow things down, slow life down. So, and also our baseball season got canceled. Right. So that was obviously some adversity. We weren't able to recruit. So like I said, but you get to focus on yourself, focus on some friends, focus on your family, which in essence is super important to me and a lot of other people. So I think within the times of adversity, we also found times of stillness and times that we could use as a blessing. So for me, it's all about perspective, right? Like you could look at it and say, man, 2020 has been awful. Or you can look at it and say, man, 2020 has given me a chance to reflect on some things about what is important in my life. And once we get out of this thing, whenever it is, I'll be ready to rock and roll.
For sure, I totally agree, and I can sympathize with that. I started a podcast in 2020. Probably wouldn't have done it if stuff didn't happen and all that. So I think I totally agree with you. So it's been a good year to reflect on what's important and what you really are passionate about. Let's start with your upbringing. You grew up in Coral Springs, Florida. What kind of sports were you into, and when did you really start to think about being a pitcher and that you could throw really well?
Yeah. Good question. I say this to young guys, and I did it myself. Like, I try to play a lot of sports. I was into golf. I played basketball. I played baseball, obviously. And I think once you get to that high school-ish, 15, somewhere around that range. And I was fortunate too. I had some talent. So I think that's where I began to specialize more and kind of broke away. I would have played football, but my parents didn't want me to something were to happen and ruin a baseball a good situation in baseball. And obviously you start playing in some travel ball tournaments and gaining some traction with some college coaches. And that's where I felt like, okay, we need to kind of tunnel this thing in a little bit and be able to focus more specialized. And I wasn't specialized young. Like, yes, I was playing, but I was also doing some other things. And I was really into everything. And I always say this even to young kids, do everything, play tennis, do some lateral quickness stuff, play basketball, you could jump, play soccer, good cardiovascular activity for, play golf, learn the mental side of the game. Do everything that you can. And that was me. And then, like I said, once I got into high school and started to like specialize a little bit into new, like, okay, I think I got some talent. I can make something happen.
Yeah, you definitely did. And just even looking up your career, I mean, you went to a perfect game showcase, which for those that don't know is a kind of a big deal for prospects around the country in high school, 15, 16 years old. You were doing travel ball out of state. I mean, you were starting to get some traction. What was it like in high school for you? Did you think like maybe I can go to a really good college here or even get drafted? Was that on your mind at all?
No, it wasn't. Not, to be honest, I don't even think by the time I was a sophomore, I even knew what Clemson University was. When
Right.
they sent me, they used to send, we don't do it anymore, but they used to send letters in the mail like, hey, David Kopp, you'd invite you to camp. And I was like, Clemson, like, where's that? Like, I don't even know. I was like, this Tiger Paw, okay.
Yeah.
So, I like I said, I was fortunate that I had a little bit of talent, and I played for a good travel ball team, and I put myself on a stage to and I had to go out there and pitch and do well. And then like I said, it's just with some talent, I was able to showcase myself, and then kind of say, okay, maybe we can go to college, maybe we can make something happen. But I didn't have any of that on my mind. Playing baseball, if you do it for the right reasons, good things are going to come out of it, right? If you're doing it to play, if you're doing it because you want to get that college scholarship, because you want to get drafted, you're going to start putting more pressure on yourself. And I think with the pressure, especially when you're young, creates all these anxieties, and the anxieties transfer over to the pitching mound. And, I just kind of just played because I loved it, because I loved my teammates, because I loved being out there and competing. And then along with some talent, I was able to put, a college scholarship together, and then it kind of went from there.
Right. I was going to ask you, so you decided to go to Clemson, but were there any other offers that you actually considered? I mean, yeah, they might have hit you up pretty early on, but when you're getting closer to end of senior year, was any other college in consideration for you?
Yeah, it was the University of Florida. Those were the two schools that really came down to. And I was kind of all set on going to the University of Florida. I remember we were driving home. That was my second official visit. And I was driving home, and my mom said at the time, the pitching coach at Clemson, he said, hey, how are you going to tell Kevin O'Sullivan that you're not going to go there? And I'm like, I don't know. This is going to be a tough one. And then I went home, slept on it, let a couple days set in. And sure enough, I ended up going to Clemson. So I called Kevin O'Sullivan, who, like I said, and I actually told him I was going there. So, yeah, that was that University of Florida and Clemson were the two schools that it came down to for me.
Do you think it was good for you to get out of state for college instead of staying in state?
Very good question. It was good for me. It was good for me. I know that some athletes or even some people want to be close to home and be around their family, and some want to experience something new. I was I'm born and raised in South Florida, and it was good for me to get out of the state, try something different, live in some cold weather, be far away from my family, and be able to kind of grow on my own.
Yeah.
And now that I'm 35, I made the decision when I was 17, 18. Now that I'm 35, now I'm back at home.
Right.
Now it's like, they always say when you're younger, you want to kind of get away from your parents, right? Kind of do your own thing. And then as you get older and your family gets older, you want to get closer to your parents again. So
right.
I'm fortunate now that I'm back home, and it was my dad's birthday on Saturday. I got a chance to see him, and I went to college when I was 18. I played professional baseball for 8+ years, 9 years, traveled my whole life, and didn't get a chance. I missed out a lot of important years with my family, seeing those birthdays and that stuff. And now coming full circle, being back home, now I get to enjoy that stuff again.
Yeah, no, that's usually how it goes. So that's good. You've gotten to come home and experience the rest of that. As far as your experience at Clemson, just in general, what was it like going to school there? The football program's obviously blown up even since you were there.
Yeah.
What was it like playing baseball there and just the whole Clemson experience?
Besides just the word awesome, Clemson is really like a piece of me. It really is. There's a part of me that when I've gone back there, it's like it feels like home. It's like my second home. And there is something very special about that place. I had it's not just the place, the people. I've created best friends, the coaching staff. Jack Leggett, who I still talk to, Kevin O'Sullivan, who I still talk to, Bradley LaCroix. I mean, special people, my roommates. Like I was, I'm best friends with my roommates. I just spoke with two of them this morning. The experience was amazing, like away from the baseball field and because of the people and the place. And then the baseball experience was amazing. I mean, I had a chance my sophomore year to go to the College World Series. I played in 3 super regionals. I won the ACC champion. We won the ACC championship when I was a sophomore. We had an unbelievable experience. We were very good. My sophomore year, we were their number 1 team in the country. I had a chance my sophomore year. I was the pitcher that threw the last pitch, and I got dogpiled on. So
that's awesome.
And in retrospect, I also got the loss in the last game of the College World Series. So we talk about balance, right? We talk about highs and lows, like had the super high of, having that experience of being that pitcher that gets dogpiled on, but then also having the loss in the last game of your season. But that's baseball. But so the baseball experience and just everything was, it was right. It was the perfect place for me. And a lot of, things that have happened to me in my life, jobs that I've gotten in the future, people that I've met in my life are all, a lot is spiderwebbed back to Clemson.
Just real quick on the football scene, what's it like going to a game when they're running down is it Death Valley? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, okay. Death Valley. It's amazing. It's super unique. When you get a chance to go there and see it. Clemson football has really taken off, and since Dabo took over as head coach. But when I was in school, they were always on the borderline of being. They were good, but they weren't great. And they I don't know if you remember, but they also had this saying like Clemsoning. Like they just always found a way to lose the big situation. They would beat Florida State. They would beat Notre Dame. They would get to like number 9 in the country, and then they lose to like Boston College at home, and you're like, how did you do that? And they'd
Yeah.
lose it in the last minute of like, they'd fumble it, and they'd say, oh, it's just Clemson being Clemson, right? But either way, it was a really good experience. And like I said, it's when you go there, you're kind of like, you're captivated. It's just a special. The aura there is special. But I think the last football game I went to was 4 years ago, and it's just obvious. The $100 million facility that they got now, it's like Disney World for 18-year-old kids, and Dabo has just totally reinvented that whole entire place. So it's definitely way different football wise than it was football wise when I was there, but overall, even running down the hill and the whole orange, the whole place, it like shuts down the streets. They shut down, for Clemson football,
Yeah, no, it looks like a great place to watch a game. So that's really cool. Maybe one day I'll have to get out there. So you had a great college career. You end up getting drafted in the second round by St. Louis back in 2007. What do you remember about the draft process and the whole stress of it all? What was it like leading up to the draft and then on draft day?
A funny story about draft day, that our area scout was actually Mike Schilt, who is now the head coach of the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's the one that called me and said, hey, we're going to take you with I can't remember, 70th, 71st pick, somewhere around there. So full circle again, talking about relationships and everything. He now the head coach, like I said, the St. Louis Cardinals. He's right up the block from us in spring training, or was last year. With COVID, we obviously weren't able to do anything this year, but he was our guest speaker for our first pitch dinner that we had for our team last year. So it was really cool. Because I still maintain that relationship with Mike Schilt. So, anyways, but so he's the one who called me on draft day. Really cool experience. A lot when you start to get into that first, second, third round, and there's some money involved. A lot went through my agent. I remember we were out in Mississippi State in a super regional. And I remember you have a lot of things going on, and that's why they've talked about like changing the dates, because you're trying to play and compete, but you also have all of this other, money and when am I going to be drafted surrounding you. So we were at the super regional, and I remember I didn't pitch very well, but ended up, getting drafted and being in a good position. And I was fortunate. The St. Louis Cardinals are unbelievable organization, top, first class organization. And I was obviously super excited. It's your dream to play professional baseball. So whenever they call your name and they call you on the phone, it was, a blessing for sure.
No, that's awesome, man. That's great. As far as your transitioning to the minor leagues, what was the transition like for you? You had some success, I saw, in in high A and double A, you were all-star a couple times, but what was the transition like for you coming out of college into pro ball, and you're facing wood bats now? Like, what was the whole mindset for you?
Yeah. Each level kind of represented its own sense of, adversity. I think every level that I went, there was actually every level that I went, I had to go back because I didn't pitch great. And then once I kind of got my feet underneath me and knew what to expect with the travel and everything, kind of would bounce myself up. But I was fortunate enough, like when I battled some injuries, which is a whole nother story, but I came right out of college and I went to high A. I was pretty much, and I would say that was a fair stack up. Like I pitched 3 years in the ACC at a very high level for the number one team in the country. Like I feel like I can go out there and handle myself against some really good competition, which I did. And I think I ended up getting hurt my first year and came back. I think it was like the second year, maybe I was an all-star, and then I bounced up to double A and, just kind of went through the levels there. So each level of the minor leagues kind of had its own challenge. I think the dynamic of the minor leagues is going to change tremendously here in the future. And it was a lot different when I was playing in the minor leagues, but definitely a good experience. Like I said, the Cardinals were first class, so every experience going in from college to pro ball, obviously the higher levels, and this, that you get up, it's just the less mistakes you can make. You're playing from, guys in high A or lower than that, maybe with not a lot of professional at bats, to you go to double A. I mean, you're one sniff away from getting to the big leagues. And then in triple A, you know how it is. You're playing in triple A with guys that are 38, 40 years old or however, and they got mortgages and kids, and it's just a lot different. And a lot of those guys have 8 years, 5 years of big league experience, and they've been through it. They've been through the process, so they know how this thing works, and they're not afraid of you, or they're not in awe of you. And they know what their strengths are, they know what their weaknesses are. So obviously the higher level that you get, the tougher it becomes.
When you got to play in Memphis for AAA, when you got to that point, did you think that the organization's behind you, you're really close, and you got a chance to make it when you're there?
Yeah. I think probably that happened in double A. Okay. When I was in double A, and I think I was the pitcher of the year in double A. And, you definitely get a sense, once the scouting director's calling you, and that, okay, then they ended up getting put on the 40-man roster too, which obviously they show some they show their love that way by rewarding you and putting you on the 40-man roster. So you're one, you're now from the 40-man roster, you could be any time that you can make to the big leagues. But no, I mean, no different with AAA. Like, I just felt like I went there. Well, actually, I went there, and I think the second game, oh my God, this is a story for you. The second game at Memphis, I was in the dugout, and we got in a brawl. And and if you leave the bench, and I'm like 23 years old, like I said, playing with grown men, and we got in a brawl, and each if you leave the bench, at the time it was like $500, and I was there. This is my second day there, and I'm like, I remember that their team was on the field, and the pitcher hit our guy, and our hitter goes to charge, and I look around, and I know some of the guys on the team, but this is my second day in AAA, and I'm like, I don't really know any. Like, I guess I'm going to bat for. I guess here we go, right? Like, here we go. So everybody charges out, and I'm kind of like 3/4 of the way behind everybody, just kind of like, all right, here we go, right? This is like my first brawl ever. And everybody that leaves the bench gets charged gets fined $500. So since I was only there for 2 days, I remember my manager, he said, "Hey, Kopp, come here." So he's like, "I'm going to say that you were in the stands doing the radar gun."
Nice. So you don't have to pay?
Yeah, so I didn't have to pay the $500.
Nice.
Because I think everybody got fined. Like, everybody left the bench. I mean, you're like total brawl, and you can't like stay on the bench, because then you look like a wuss.
Yeah.
So so he said, I'm gonna let you go on this one.
That's cool.
Like, I'm gonna say we're in the stands doing the radar gun. So I was like, all right, perfect. That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but getting back to what I was saying is, I think, like I said, in double A, once you start showing, because double A, I think for me, I don't know if you feel the same way, double A is the difference where, like, you find out whether you could play in the big leagues or not. What do you think? Like, what's your...
Yeah, definitely. And I had to go to double A twice, just because the first year I struggled, and then the second year I had and I transitioned from starter to the bullpen. That was a different deal also. So I was trying to find my niche there. And I did, and then I got moved up to AAA. But same thing as you. Like, there's a ton of dudes ahead of you. There's guys with big league experience that are they're not going to have guys making $1 million in the minor leagues just chilling down there. Like, you're behind some dudes. So
what do you think was the toughest level for you? Like, was it double A, triple A?
My first year in double A was like, damn, this is a different level. Like, I struggled that year, So I had to really reassess and just get better. Like, I think double A was the hardest transition from high A to double A for me. But once I conquered it, then I was good after that.
You know what else is a difference maker too? That not a lot of people that have played understand this, but like the ballparks that you're playing in, right? Like, and the areas that you're playing in. When I know high A, I didn't play in the California League, which is like
I was with you in
Inland
the Florida
Empire.
State League. I was in,
Okay, so
yeah,
so the Florida State League, obviously,
yeah,
like you could throw two old fastballs down the middle, and you're like, oh, it gets caught. You
yeah.
start going to Double A, and you start playing in Springfield, and you start going to, and then you play in the PCL and Triple A, and you go to Colorado Springs or you go to Vegas, and you're like, whew, like you have a 5.5 ERA in the PCL, and you had a good year,
Right.
So
I was
that.
in Reno, so that the ball flies in Reno.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you can have to. They always say just like, you have to just limit. Like instead of giving up 3 earned runs, you just like, just don't give up 7.
Right,
Like
right.
just don't give up 5. Just don't get, because some days you might get left out there for to clean up for an inning or two because you just might not have anybody else and you just got to wear it.
Right.
But yeah, my first start in AAA was in Albuquerque, and that place is like, you're like, it's just different.
Good
So I
luck.
think a lot of people don't understand. Like it not only are you traveling, right? We wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning and traveling. And people, I'm sure, maybe watching this, like, oh, you get to play baseball. Like, of course, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I
Sure.
love doing it.
Right.
But it's tough. I mean, the minor leagues weeds the weak players out. It really does. It will, it can either strengthen you and kind of show who you are, or it just kind of washes you away. And that's why a lot of people will say, like, oh, the minor leaguers, they need to get treated better and whatever. But sometimes it's just the way it works. Like you work your way up to get to the big leagues by eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Because if you don't like doing it, it's going to weed you out. It's going
Right.
to weed you out. It's going to weed you out.
Someone else will gladly do it. So
For sure.
yeah.
For sure.
So, I mean, the organization obviously liked you enough to send you to the Arizona Fall League, and you were 25 years old at the time I saw, so still very much in the mix there. What do you remember about, the Arizona Fall League? Obviously, a lot of the prospects from all the other teams go. It's
Oh
after
yeah.
the season. Everybody's tired. Your arm's hanging, right? Like, so what do you
Oh
remember
yeah.
about going to the Fall League?
Facing Bryce Harper and Mike Trout.
How was that experience for you?
Bryce Harper pop up to center, and actually faced Mike Trout a lot because he was in Double A with Arkansas Travelers, who
Right.
was the Angels Double A at the time, and I
Yeah.
don't think they're the Angels. I think they may be Seattle now.
Okay.
But anyways, so I faced him a bunch. But that was, and I think also I went to the Fall League. I was 25, like you mentioned. I was the oldest guy, I think, in the league. And the reason why was because they took me off the roster. The Cardinals took me off the roster. I had some injuries, battled some injuries. They took me off the roster. They made me a reliever. When I became a reliever, it alleviated some of the stress because I wouldn't have to throw 7 innings at a time. I was just throwing 1 inning.
Yeah.
Velo kind of ticked up a little bit. And they wanted to put me in the Fall League. I remember talking to Jeff Luhnow, who's was the GM of the Astros, who was the scouting director for the Cardinals at the time. And he's like, hey, we're going to put you in the Fall League, and then we're going to kind of make a determination whether we want to put you on the 40-man roster or not. Again, so I go to the Fall League, and I didn't pitch great. I mean, I don't think I pitched good enough to get back on there. I did pitch well when he was there. He came and watched me. I still remember. But they did put Adam Ottavino on the roster instead of me. He called me. He's like, hey, we're not going to put you on the roster, but we're going to put somebody else on. And then they put Adam Ottavino on. It was a good decision for them. And the guy's making like $27 million right now for the Yankees either way. Right. But it was a good experience. It was a lot of really, yes, there is that point of like everybody's arms tired and it's a tough place to pitch because, it's in Arizona and the ball's flying. But it was good to be around. They only pick 4 or 5 prospects from each team. So when you're one of those prospects, you're like, ooh, I'm one of the 5. Yeah, I'm one of the 5 prospects. I was a prospect. I say that I was 25 years old. But that just goes, the Cardinals and I love. They're still my favorite team to this day. I have a lot of respect for that organization and Mike Schild and Mozeliak and all, everybody that was there. A lot of the guys that were if you look at their big league
Roster.
coaching staff,
Yeah.
well, their roster now not so much, but when they won in 2012, it was a lot of guys that they brought up through the system.
The homegrown guys.
And their coaching staff, if you look at their coaching staff, Oliver Marmol, who played shortstop for them, who they released, and he became a coach. He's Mike Schilt's right-hand man. Their third base coach, Ron Warner, who was my AA coach. Brian Eversgerd, who's the bullpen coach, was the AAA pitching coach at the time in Memphis. So they've had a lot of guys in their coaching staff that have come up through that homegrown, and that's why it's such an awesome organization. And they, even at 25 years old, they're like, hey, we're going to try this thing, right? We're going to put you in the fall league because we like you. We think you're still a prospect. I know I was saying it's weird at 25 years old to be a prospect, but they still believed in me, and I still believed in them, and there was a good relationship. Even when they released me and let me go, it was all cordial. It was all love.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up, because as good as they were to you, obviously everybody goes through the business side of the game, right? So they decide to release you. You got to look elsewhere. And even just before you sign on with the Tigers, how was that mentally for you when you got released?
Yeah. It was tough, but I knew I still had left in me. You know what I mean? I knew I was like this isn't the end of the road. I felt good. I felt healthy. I felt like my stuff was good. And I knew hey, there's 29 organizations that my agent can go and we could try this thing, right? And we had actually the Tigers were going to draft me the pick after the Cardinals that year if the Cardinals didn't take me. But the Cardinals drafted me instead of the Tigers. So sure enough, full circle, the Tigers end up picking me up as a free agent when I was released. So, but fast forward, went to the Tigers, spent 2 years with them. Didn't pitch great, just to be honest. And you got to, but my stuff was really good. It was actually the first time in my life I hit 99 miles an hour. And
there's usually a place for that, man.
Yeah, and I hit it 3 times, so one time it wasn't a fluke. Everybody says, why not 100? And I'm like, I don't know, I tried.
Not that many people can do that.
Yeah, actually, the first time I threw 99, it went over everybody's head to the backstop.
Yeah.
But I made sure they wrote it in there.
Right.
But anyways, so spent 2 years with them. Didn't pitch great, but they gave me an opportunity. Spent 2 years in AA. Numbers weren't great, but my stuff was pretty good. So they gave me an opportunity. And then after that, that's when we met in Long Island, right?
Well, actually, we met before that. I was going to bring up Team Israel, right?
So
I was going to ask you about that. So 2012, at the end of the season, you and I meet for the first time, and we get selected in this group of, I guess, Jewish American baseball players, and we get credited to play for Team Israel, for the heritage thing, right?
Yeah.
Other countries were doing this too. They were having guys from all over the place.
For sure.
But you and I got to meet in this weird, wacky experience right near your hometown. We were in Palm Beach. Yeah. So what was it like for you to play for a country, no longer yourself, and then just meeting all the guys? What was the experience like for you?
I thought it was awesome. I mean, it's such a cool, unique. You had Jock Peterson was there, who's this young pup, who's this super outgoing. He's a top prospect with the Dodgers. And then you had Sean Green, who's I don't know how old Sean Green was, and I'll probably mention this, and some people will watch this podcast and be like, who's Sean Green, right? He's only the second person ever to sign, or he was the first or second person to sign a $100 million contract, I'm pretty sure. Something like that, but he's obviously was pretty big in baseball. So we had this wide, and then you also had some of the actual heritage players there as well.
From
Nate
Israel.
Fish, Nate, Shlomo, Lippet. So it was, Brad Osmus was our manager.
Yeah.
So it was just such a awesome, like I said, your spider web of connections, right? Such a unique setup that I thought was really good because, what we did, in my opinion, we kind of set the stage for Team Israel to do what they did in 16, right? And we actually won the pool and were able to do something that they've never did ever.
Right. Israel didn't even have a team before that was the first team Israel had ever put together
Yeah.
talent-wise. And also forgot to mention Gabe Kapler was an assistant coach. He's the
There
San
you
Francisco
go.
Giants coach right now. Like, we
That's
are
what I mean.
big league
Yeah,
staff.
for sure. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There was some. What was your experience? Do you feel similar?
I thought it was cool. Like, it was just something I had never, when you go in the minors, as you would know, you're playing for yourself, right? Yeah, if the
Yeah.
team wins, great. But in reality, everyone's just trying to move up in the organization. This
Yeah.
was a couple weeks of us just playing for a country and for ourselves. It was kind of a different experience. It was cool.
Yeah. No, it was. I thought it was cool. It was unfortunate we ended up, losing that last game.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think we set the stage for. They really were like, wow, we could win this thing. We could bring some guys together and make this thing happen, and they did, right? And then they put together. Now they got a movie about it,
right?
Just
we
a
were
really cool experience.
Yeah, it was cool. Well, yeah. So I wanted to ask you about that, and then a couple of years later, you and I reunite, as you mentioned, in Long Island, New York, to play for the Ducks. So we're both trying to revitalize our careers. It's kind of a last-ditch effort to get back to affiliated baseball. For me, I guess I got there and I was like, all right, in the first month, I'm trying to get back to the minors, right? I want to pitch well and get out of here. Well, it doesn't exactly happen like that always.
Yeah.
But then you kind of set in and you enjoy while you're there. We had a great group of guys. What was your mindset going to independent ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like you said, it's like you're going in and you're trying to put yourself in a position to get signed. And you're like, okay, if I just go in there and I put up good numbers or whatever, there's a scout going to see me and then they're going to sign me. And then you realize, like, holy crap, this league's pretty good, right? Like, there's a lot of guys that are in this league, and we can name them, right?
Sure.
What's the left-handed pitcher that signed it was with the Red Sox? Why his name?
Oh, Rich Hill.
Rich Hill, right? Was there like the year after, right?
Dontrell Willis.
Dontrell Willis. I mean, the list goes on, and we're naming a few, right? But there's named players that have played 8, 10 years in the big leagues, 5 years in the big leagues, maybe more, somewhere in that range, and they're doing the same thing, right? They're like, hey, I don't want to give this thing up yet. I still think I'm pretty good. And you're going through lineups where you're like, that it's very similar to AAA, lower better, right? And you can't just go in there and think like, oh, I'm going to get signed, because everybody else is thinking the same thing.
Right.
So they're trying to be just as good. But like you said, I think you got to take a level of like, okay, I'm going to enjoy myself, and I'm with good people that are all in the same. And actually, Jeremy Accardo, who was there as well, is now, I don't know if you know this, but he's the assistant pitching coach for the New York Mets.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow.
So now a lot of pitching coaches in the big leagues, I think I don't know how many teams there are, a handful of teams that have assistant pitching coaches that obviously help the pitching coach. And I was looking up the Mets roster the other day, and he's assistant pitching coach. So
Very
Jeremy
cool.
Accardo, another guy, spent, nobody maybe know his name too well, but he spent, 8 years in the big leagues or something like that.
And, of course, the mayor of the Long Island Ducks, Lou Ford, of course.
Yeah, Lou Ford. Yeah, he was like player coach, right? He's like coaching third base.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's a cool experience. And, I obviously, like I said, just with anything, getting back to Clemson or whatever, double it years, it's all about your experience. It's all about meeting people. And if it wasn't for playing baseball and those experiences, we wouldn't be sitting on this podcast right now.
Right.
Yeah. So many, that is like we talk about this as a staff, is like, you do baseball because you love it. You play sports because you love meeting people, because you love competing for the guy next to you, because you you're going to develop these cool, and also the travel, right? Like, we've got to travel to places that we've never seen, because of baseball, and you get to learn and meet people. So that's what for me is just another experience, right? Let's go to Long Island. I've never been there before. Yeah. Let's test it out. Let's see if I can. And in the meantime, if I can, make this, get on a team and do things, okay, perfect. It didn't end up working out for me. Well, I actually got Mexico. I got the job. I got to pitch in Mexico because of it. So, and that was another cool experience because of what I did in Long Island.
I was going to ask you about that. So your last kind of playing experience was in Mexico professionally. So I wanted to ask you about. I know you had a great story about with the playoff bonuses and with one of the owners of the teams. But if you can
Oh
go
yeah.
through your Mexico experience, the differences between playing in America versus playing in Mexico, and then the playoff story you had.
Yeah. I think anytime you get a chance to play internationally, I think guys should do it. I think it just puts a different level of perspective about, excuse me, about what other baseball is in another country versus how Americanized or how, I don't want to say easy, the baseball here is. And what I mean is, like, I traveled on a bus in Mexico 7 hours with no bathroom on the bus, right? And you can imagine where guys have to go to the bathroom, and you're playing these games, you go in the games and they're playing the music like all the way through. You can't even hear yourself think. They're just playing music while you're throwing balls and strikes. Like, they don't care, right? And you get back here to United States, and you're playing somewhere and you're like, this is so easy, right? Like, this is, and I think because of those experiences, like, I've never went to Venezuela. I've never went to the Dominican Republic to play. But if you look at the way a lot of those guys play the game, they play it with a lot of passion and they love it. And I think when we go to other places and you see the appreciation that these guys have for the game, because it's just a little bit wild. It's just a little bit different.
Yeah.
When you go and you play somewhere different. So, and getting back to what you were saying, we had the story of the playoffs. So we made the playoffs, and it's kind of a little bit of a free for all in a sense, not like in a bad way, but I mean, anything goes, right? And so our players went to bat for the playoff bonus, and we made the playoffs, and they basically said, hey, listen, we're not putting the team on the field unless you give us more of a bonus. And you could be like, well, what? Well, what would happen? Like, you can't do that. Well, what would happen is they have the potential that they could put in another team. If you forfeit, they could put in the next place team because they want to have the playoffs over there because you're making money. And that team would get the money versus our team. And we would just all, like, we'd have to wear it and just go home. But,
Yeah.
So we had a team meeting. And one of our players stands up, our team captain, and they're talking in Spanish, and I'm like, the person sitting at one of the guys who speaks both English and Spanish sit next to me, like, here's what's happening. And so he's basically like, listen, here's the deal. This is how much money we want. Each player wants extra for the playoffs. We want, I think he asked for like food after the game, right? We want a nice spread. We want beers stocked up in the fridge, right? Like, this is what we want. We made the playoffs. You're going to make extra money. And this is what we want. And then they do the handshake. And then I think we settled for, like I was saying, a little bit less money.
Sure.
And then you settle it, and it's a handshake, and then you move on, so it's just such a cool, like, it's just different. It's just a different experience. Like, that would, if you were trying to do that nowadays, if the players, you see how much animosity the players have with the owners, and then they have to have the agreements, and then they have to have lawyers, and then they have to have, the players association, and then, right. And in Mexico, you just stand right there and you say, hey, man, here's what we want. Here's what we want. This is how it is. Let's shake hands. Let's play baseball.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So cool experience.
No collective bargaining agreements down there.
Yeah. No signed papers.
That's great.
Yeah. Nothing.
That's awesome. So now, as we shift to your coaching career, you decide to stop playing, and then you end up back at Clemson as a grad assistant. What was that process like? When did you really think you wanted to be a coach? Like, how did this all come about?
Yeah, I didn't think about it. I didn't know I wanted to be.
Sure.
What I did know is that I had a lot of knowledge and I had a lot of experience.
Sure.
And man, I would be wasting it if I didn't give it away. And not only that, and I get this from my dad, I really enjoy, he's a life coach. He's got his license. I really like helping people. I'm in it. When you strike people out, there's a sense of, fulfillment, like, oh man, yeah, I'm helping my team. But when you help another human being, not just become a better baseball player, but become a better human. And you can get them drafted, and you see the light bulbs click in their head, and you're like, man, like that's where it is. If we could all be a little bit better at helping the next person next to us, this world would be a better place, right? But anyway, so go back to, so when I was in Mexico, I started the light bulb started kind of clicking in a little bit of like, man, what should I do, right? Should I come back and try another Long Island deal, right? Should my agent try to go get a minor league deal? 8+ years into this thing, I'm 3 surgeries deep. I'm just getting off buses that don't have bathrooms on it for 7 hours. What do I want to do, right? So started going through my mental Rolodex of the spider web of relationships that I've created. And the one main thing I knew that I wanted to do, which kind of led me into all this, is finish my degree. So I was drafted as a junior, and I was 2 semesters away from finishing. And they have a program set up at Clemson where guys can go back and get your degree, and they'll also help you, stipend and give you some rent money and stuff like that. So I had spoke with the head coach at the time, Jack Leggett, who was my head coach. So he was the coach there for 22, 23 years. And I said, hey, what would be the plan if I want to come back and finish? And he said, we had a conversation. It was great. He was like, oh, we'd love for you to come back. You could help out coaching. That would be awesome. So in that meantime, and this was before the summer. So this was probably February. It's probably January once I got done playing winter ball, somewhere around there. It was like just about to be spring training. And I was like, okay, maybe if I get a job, I say get a job. Maybe if I get a minor league gig, I'll go back to that. But if I don't, maybe I'll want to do my degree. So I come back here from Mexico, and I basically say, you know what? I think I had a conversation with myself. I think I was 30 at the time. And I'm looking at the rest of the field, and everybody else is 18, 19 years old. And a lot of other guys are throwing 96, 97. And I'm like, okay, realistically, where do I stack up, and what do I want with my future? Right. So that's where I continued the conversation with Coach Leggett, and I flew up there to Clemson, and I basically sat down with him, and I, wanted to know what everything entailed and getting my degree, and how am I going to help with the team. And, in the meantime, there was a coaching transition, and the coaching transition went from Leggett to MiLB, who's now the current head coach of Clemson. And he didn't really know that anything like this was going on. Like, I was going to come in and be the graduate assistant. But Bradley LaCroix, who I was talking about, who coached at Clemson when I played, he's now the recruiting coordinator at Clemson. And he was the middleman for me. So he basically said to Monty, like, hey, this is a guy that played here, super passionate about, wants to finish his degree. And Monty was like, hell yeah, let's do it. Let's bring him on. Let him finish up, and let's have him help it. Why not? Why wouldn't we want a guy that's had all this experience? So helped out as the graduate assistant, got my degree, and became, and this is how I knew it was meant to be, the second coach ever at Clemson to win the ACC championship as a player and a coach. And that year that I was a graduate assistant, we won the ACC championship, and we're finished the 6th, or I think, whatever we were ranked, 6th, 7th at the time. And I was like, you know what? I knew it at that moment. I'm like, this is what I want to do. I enjoy this thing. I enjoy helping guys. I enjoy winning baseball games. My office is the baseball field. I love this. I love this place. I love doing this. And then went from there.
Before we move on to the next school you went to, you had a funny bet with your players about if they win the ACC championship or not. What happened in that?
That is funny. Okay, so I still get it to this day. I try to do my best to stay in shape, and I still throw with my guys, and everybody's like, why don't you play? Why don't you play? Why don't you pitch? You should go try. You could still throw hard. You could still do it. And they don't really know what everything's about. You know,
Right,
you and I
right.
both know what the minor leagues is. It's more than just getting up there and throwing.
Yeah, just because you
But
can throw hard doesn't mean you're going to get an opportunity. So
yeah, and you got to throw hard for like 6 months too,
right.
and not just like one day. So anyways, the players were like, listen, you know, it went something along the lines of, why don't you go try out, or why don't you throw against us? Like, we want to see like if you still got it. And I would kind of brush it off like, nah, I don't need to prove anything to anybody, you know. And so the agreement was, if we won the ACC championship or we went to Omaha, that I would either have to, number one, face them, or number one, try out again. And so I was like, all right, what are the chances that we're going to win the ACC championship or go to Omaha, right? Like, I mean, we had a good team, but that's like a small percentage of just anybody, even if you're a good team.
Yeah.
So I was like, sure, no problem. You're right. Sure enough, we win the ACC championship. And I remember, as soon as we won it, like the next day, I get a text from one of the players, or somebody said something like, hey, remember our bet? Like,
Oh
you got to do
gosh.
this thing. So sure enough, I think it was like the one of the practices. We still have video, because actually we had their pitching coach there got in the box. We like made it an awesome, cool little deal. And
Sure.
I remember, I was like, all right. So I put on the cleats, I put on the pants. We made it official. It was like all real. And it was like at the end of like a night, we had like a 5 o'clock practice. So it was like perfect. Like once after practice, it was getting dark and it was under the lights. And it was a really good bonding experience for the whole team. And I threw, and I remember like my first two guys, I was like 90, 94, and the stuff was really good. The adrenaline was back, and I wasn't like that far removed from baseball. And I remember Monty, who's the head coach, he comes out to the mound. He's like, hey, you want to face any more guys? You know, I'm like, yeah, keep coming, right? Like, keep them coming. So he comes out, and I remember he stands on the mound, and he looks at me, and he's like, are you sure you don't want to go back and play? And I was like, I'm good.
Did,
You
did
know,
anybody get a hit off you?
yeah,
Okay.
there was, I faced, so I was like probably 90, 94, my first 20 pitches. And then after that, I was probably like 87, 88, because my
Sure.
arm was falling off at that
Right.
point. But I gave up a hit to Seth Beer, who now, I want to say he was traded. He's maybe in the Diamondbacks organization, but he was like the best player of all time at Clemson, or one of them. Does that name ring a bell?
No, I'm removed from
Okay,
it, so I don't know who these guys are.
you'll see him in the big leagues soon.
Okay, all right.
Chris Oakey, who was their catcher there, and actually the pitching coach, Coach C, got in there and like, he's gonna watch this and crack. He's gonna be like, you didn't remember the hit I got off you. Like, threw the
Uh-huh.
bat out and like got a hit. But it was awesome. I like doing that stuff. I did it last year with our guys.
Nice.
I got on it because every once in a while, you just got to go out there and show them. You know, you just got to show them like, you know what you're talking about. You know,
Like, see, you're not that good. No.
yeah. Or you could say, hey, listen, you're making it more complicated than it is.
Right.
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 Keep it simple. Right.
Right.
But no, it's, yeah, either way, it was a good experience for the players. You know, that came about it, and it was a good deal overall.
For sure. So your next stop, you decide to go to Florida Southern, and you're actually the pitching coach. So you finally get this first real gig here, even though you're only there for 1 year, right?
Yep.
But what was
Yeah.
that like for you to, you're the guy now for being a pitching coach. So what was it like from going from grad assistant to now you're at a new program, you don't know any of the players, and now you're the pitching coach?
Yeah. No, it was awesome first experience. Lance Negro, who is the nephew of the knuckleball.
Oh, Phil Negro?
Phil Negro.
Wow.
Yep. So he was the first head coach I ever, really as the pitching coach ever was under. It's awesome. I actually just spoke with him last night.
Nice.
So yeah, it's really good experience, and it was one of those situations where they were coming off a few years of not being very good on the mound, so they were looking for somebody new, looking for somebody fresh, and I was fortunate. I kind of found the job, and I flew down and interviewed for it, and he ended up giving me the job. And we actually did really good. We had a really, really good year. We got the program back to the playoffs, to the postseason for the first time in 4 or 5 years. Our pitching staff led the entire Division II. It was a Division II program in Lakeland, Florida, and we led all of Division II baseball in strikeout to walk ratio. So we went from, and it was, I mean, we had good players. So I'm not saying I just went in there and just threw the magic potion on. You got to have good players to do good things. But they were also thirsty for knowledge. They were thirsty for a new guy to come in with passion and energy. And, you know, it was awesome. It was good first experience. Lance was the type of coach that he allowed me to do whatever I needed to do. Right. He took the reign. He didn't, there was no micromanaging, and he just allowed me to be a full pitching coach for a full year. And credit, and I will give credit where credit's due. The pitching coach at Clemson, Andrew C., helped me a lot. Like he didn't help, he continues to help me. He's a good friend of mine. I still talk to him to this day. He gave me a lot of the stuff that I was able to watch from him from the pitching coach side, right? Like, you know, you think as a player, you can just walk in and just all of a sudden just be a good pitching coach at the college level. There's some things you have to do and know, and Excel spreadsheets you have to create, and, you know, first pitch strikes and this, and it's not hard to do it, but Coach Shee gave me all of his information and the databases and his processes to apply to when I was being a pitching coach, right? And then I kind of formulate my own, which makes me Coach Kopp. And so I went there with some ideas of how I played from Clemson, from the pitching coaches that I've, you know, had in my career. And I went there and I kind of had free reign to do what I needed to do to kind of just jump in the deep end and see what happens, right? Like, you've played for a long time. Let's see how you are as a pitching coach on your own, with no help, with no assistant. And we smacked it out of the park. It was awesome. It was a good experience. We had a really good year. It was fun. You know, I played at the D1 level, and then I go to the D2 level, and it's the D2 level in the state of Florida is really, really good. Like, awesome, really good baseball. And the reason why, I mean, we have a lot of transfers, because you could transfer from D1 to D2 without sitting out a year.
Right.
So we have a lot of, you know, so-called D1 kickbacks.
The bounce backs, yeah.
Yeah, and you would go, and we had some really good player. I mean, we had Logan Browning, who's the University of Florida's like top pitcher at the time, and wanted to come back home. So it was just a good situation. I had a lot of good kids. I had a really good experience at my time there.
And you transitioned to Florida Atlantic, so and you've been at FAU now you're on your 4th year, which is pretty cool. How would you describe now? Yeah, you're an assistant. Are you the pitching coach, or are you the assistant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're the pitching coach. Got it.
Yep.
Okay. As far as, you know, is it a different talent level? Is it like, what's the difference now as you're in this many years into your career there?
Just depth, to be honest. Like, you know, the depth is deeper per se from the Division I level to the Division II level. You know, the top guys, the top 5 guys are comparable. You know, we're probably going to get in at the D1 level, the more blue chip high school player, versus the Division II level, where your good players are your D1 kickbacks, your junior college players, and every once in a while you're going to sneak in some high school players that are going to be pretty good that fell through the cracks. You know, so that would be it as far as, you know, the totality of the difference was just the depth. You know, our 12th guy here is pretty good. And he's gonna, you know, he could, on any given day, he can be our number 7 guy. He can be our number 6 guy if those guys, you know, the scales can flop. But at the D2 level, once you get past your 6th, 7th, 8th guys, you know, you don't want to do, you want to stay within your strengths, and that's that core group at the top.
Yeah. And now I want to ask you about, I know you have to use analytics now, and we talked a little bit about this pre-show, and the way you look at analytics and maybe some of your analogies and how you use it, and just far as using it and also just getting outs. So all the coaches I have on, I ask them nowadays, because you and I both didn't come up in the analytics world. How do you now use that for your program?
Yeah. Well, there is you have to use it now. Okay, let me take that back. You don't have to do anything,
Sure.
okay? But I was talking to the assistant pitching coordinator for the Marlins the other day, and he was telling me that if you don't have an idea about what's going on in the analytics or the metrics or how to turn on a Rapsodo or how to read some of these metrics on a Rapsodo and be able to explain it, it's going to be very hard for you to get a job. It's going to be very hard for you to explain to young 18 to 22-year-old kids who are already visual learners, right? Like you and I are probably more kinesthetic learners. Like we learn by feel because we didn't have the video. All we had was our pitching coach standing behind us and saying, "Hey, get more out front.
Right.
You feel that? You feel that?" And you're like, "Oh, okay, I got it."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But nowadays you got to have your phone and you got to have the screen and you got to show them and you got to understand they got to put, and it's great, right? Like it's good because the learning curve can now become faster for some guys. Whereas you don't have to explain things over and over and over again and hitting yourself on the wall, your head on the wall. And you could show them the video, show them slow motion, show them the ball flight and why it's doing certain things or their hand placement or their legs or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, wow, I see what you're talking about, coach. I get it now." Right. So
Yeah.
when I say you have to have some of that stuff, I don't mean like you can't be successful without it. Right. Because at the end of the day, that you still got to have some sort of the analytics, what I like to call it. You have your analytics and you have your manalytics, right? And that's the difference in, maybe seeing something on with the metrics, but also feeling something in your gut and knowing like, okay, this is the pitching change we're going to make. We talk about the Blake Snell situation, right? There was a guy who I know who interviewed for a pitching coach job of a big league team 3 weeks ago. And the manager asked him in the interview process, "What would you have done in the Blake Snell situation?" Right? It's a major question because it's analytics versus your gut versus analytics. And I think, in my opinion, at the end of the day, obviously, it's about getting outs. And we all understand that. And it's really, you just got to learn how to marry the two. I think as a coach nowadays, it is my recommendation that you learn everything that you possibly can. You have to be a sponge. You have to know this information out there, and then you have to know which guy to use it to, right? You have to know, okay, is this guy, does he need the Rapsodo? Do we need to work on pitch shaping, or do we need to work on his times to home plate, right? And I don't really care about what the pitch shape looks like today or what his fastball spin rate looks like or what his spin direction looks like and all these terms. All I care about is he a 1.30 or below when he throws a pitch. Because if he's not a 1.30 or below, he can't hold runners. And if you can't hold runners, you can't pitch in tight situations. If you can't pitch in tight situations, then why are you here? Like we want guys that could pitch in crunch time situations, that can pitch, in big games for us. So I think sometimes you just have to learn you got to learn it all and then learn what do I want to use to my player when I want to use it.
No, I think that's very well said. It's crazy. Just when I talk to people about analytics now, it's a part of the game now, and you have to embrace it.
Yeah, it is. It's part of the game, and also like plyo balls have now become almost part of the throwing program now. We never. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think maybe we're in Long Island, like somebody had the tennis balls with the pennies in it and wrapped up in black tape, and we would just kind of throw it. And then you pick up a baseball and you're like, "Ooh, this feels lighter." Right? There's
the whole weighted ball throwing program you're talking about.
Yeah, or just like the plyo care warm up stuff, right?
Okay,
You just warm up doing with the plyo balls, the different colored balls. It's almost become like part of most guys' programs now. Like this is my warm up. Like instead of me just going over to the bar and squatting, I'm going to do some other warm up stuff so that way I can get myself to max squat today, right? I'm going to do some other stuff to get myself to max velocity today. So it's there's no doubt. And the the best question is what's coming next. Is who right? Is it going to be more analytics, more the managers making decisions based off of what they say on a computer, or is it going to be more they're going to rehire the guys that are the more old school type type coaches. But in my opinion, it's there. As a coach, you need to gather all the tools and then you have your toolbox when you go to the field. And when your player needs the hammer, you need to be able to explain to him how to use the hammer. And when he needs the wrench, you need to be able to explain to him how to use the wrench. And you got to be able to use these toolbox, but you can't use the tools on the player if you don't know what the tools do, right? If you don't know how to use the tools, it's not going to be good. You're going to slow the development of your player.
That's perfectly said. I like that analogy. Yeah. Last random topic. So I know you're a big Miami Heat guy because, of course, you're in South Florida, and of course, I'm a Laker fan. And we used to go at it about LeBron. Obviously, I used to be, and kind of still am, a LeBron hater. So
why? Wait, how can? Well,
okay. There's so many reasons. Where do I begin?
No, I hear you.
Since he got to the Heat, he's stacked the deck on all of his teams, right? He's eliminated competition by forming super teams. So that is my big overall. I mean, think about who he's playing with. Anthony Davis now. I mean, damn, like how much talent do you need? Like they're better than last year now, which is great. But
here's the thing about LeBron too. Well, we could say many things, but what LeBron also does. And we could say he's had time in Cleveland where maybe he's alienated himself, and maybe the 1 year with the Lakers, he's kind of alienated himself because they weren't that good. But he also makes players better too.
Totally
Anthony Davis this year was like, he's been very good, but he was doing stuff like he was doing jump turnaround 3-pointers, and I'm like,
right,
who is this guy?
No, he's AD is unbelievable. But when he was in New Orleans, they were like first round exit, barely making the playoffs. They weren't doing anything. So I got to give it to LeBron. Everybody loves he's 35 years old, 17 years in, blah, 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 the whole story.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you and I used to go at it a little bit because LeBron was on your team then. The Lakers were terrible then.
Full circle. We're back first,
right?
Full circle.
I tell people this. The toughest thing in sports that I've ever had to deal with as a fan is a guy like LeBron, who I could not stand, is now on my team.
My God, you hated him.
How do I root for the guy?
You hated him.
Of course, in the bubble this year, the Heat made it to the finals somehow, and they played the Lakers, and of course, you know what happened there.
Yeah.
But what do you think about this Heat team now compared to the LeBron teams? And Spoelstra's still there, Pat Riley's still there. What are your thoughts on the Heat now?
Yeah, no, I think somebody was writing an article. Somebody wrote an article. It was like a former Heat player. I was reading it on ESPN, like Sports Illustrated, or something about like the Heat culture and how Pat Riley has done such a good job, and Spoelstra's on, and everybody's like rowing in the right direction. They go always, in the same direction, I should say. And that's what I think happened to the Heat. I think when you go in this bubble situation, it was kind of like no fans. There's a different type of adversity. You don't really have your family around. And I think the Heat almost, and Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and all these guys, all these no-name type players just kind of came together and formulated like no egos, right? It doesn't matter who's got to win this game. Where in basketball, we have huge egos in basketball. There's guys that are left teams because they don't get enough shots or whatever. And I think the Heat did such a good job in that. And I think it started from the top. It started from Pat Riley and the culture that he set. And then Spoelstra does a really good job, who I think is super underrated, because for him to deal with, he brought on LeBron, right? Or I say he brought on, but he was the coach that had LeBron and had these mega superstars and learned how to handle all of them through losing to the Mavericks, or I think it was the Mavericks when they lost. And then they ended up winning after that. But for him to handle all of those guys, but also continue to spread the message and make them competitive. And Pat Riley puts all the pieces together, and they get Jimmy Butler. And then Jimmy Butler's supposed to be this bad guy that like nobody else wanted. And then he, comes to the Heat, and now he's like the superstar, right? So I think it's just the Heat had such a special year because of the whole culture and the type of players that they had. Whereas I think the Lakers were just like, they're like, the super talented, like they got the best player, have the second best player, and maybe just making things more happen because of their talent. But you also have to give them credit because, they did do, I think they had Morris Is it Maurice?
Markeith.
Markeith.
Yeah.
They have, and I'm missing some guys, guys like that who became better, right? And Markeith Morris isn't like a superhero.
He was a journeyman, yeah. And I got to give Rob Pelinka credit because once Magic Johnson left the front office, then Rob Pelinka started making all these great moves, and he got Dwight Howard back to LA. Never thought that would happen, and he contributed, right? JaVale
what about
McGee, Playoff Rondo showed up. Okay, but KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I wanted him gone after last year, and then he becomes the best role player.
Unbelievable.
And maybe it's a LeBron effect. Maybe it is, and that's true. But yeah, that was amazing. But I want to actually get back to Jimmy Butler. When he left Philadelphia, which you thought would be they're a championship ready team.
Yeah.
I thought he was just coming to take a money grab in Miami, right? You didn't really know what Miami was. And now he's the hardest worker. He's got the team mindset. I'm definitely was shocked the way that Jimmy Butler actually became. But he is the Miami Heat culture. He fits what they're doing there. Yeah,
no, he gutted. I mean, you look at some performances. He gutted some things out for real. He was. If it wasn't for Jimmy Butler, you could say they would have probably never been in the position that they were. And I think the unique part about it is. When the fourth quarter came, it was the Heat knew, hey, we pass him the ball. This is his time, right? This is his time. He's the guy. And then he would kind of make these layups or 16-foot shots, 18-foot jumper, whatever it is. But then he'd also kick it out. He'd kick it out. And they had, that's the best thing too. They had shooters, man. And the young kid, he's slipping my mind.
You got Duncan Robinson and Hero.
Yeah, Hero. I mean, this is a shooters league now.
Yeah.
So when you have guys like that, and your Hero was a rookie, but is no fear, right? He had no fear to shoot. It was a cool matchup. I think listen, if I were the NBA and I were Adam Silver, that's the guy who runs it. I mean, you got to think they did an unbelievable job, right? They had very entertaining playoffs, no positive cases. I think only one guy brought one girl in.
Yeah.
It's right. But I mean, I thought they did it. You look at that, what they did compared to football, which is kind of, turning into they have no quarterbacks on one day and then they're playing on Wednesday. And then baseball had a bunch of cases and, you got to give, what they did. I thought they did a good job. And I thought the Heat Lakers was an intriguing matchup. And I think, for you and I who like to watch basketball, it was fun to watch.
Yeah.
It was fun.
No, it was great. Glad to see the Lakers back on top where they belong.
Yeah. And they're going to be, man, they've made moves now.
We're just taking players from the Clippers and just all right, we'll see, man. We got Trez. It's going to be good.
Yeah, because they want to win, and I think when and now it takes a little bit stress off LeBron because he doesn't have to play so many minutes, and the longevity of him is just an anomaly in what he's been able to do at his age. But like you said, you surround the pieces around him, and the expectation and the culture is we're supposed to win. You're supposed to get better. Your role. You know what you're supposed to do. And that's where I think LeBron has some, he has some it. It's the it factor. He has that ability to make guys around him better to help his team win a championship.
For sure. Totally agree. He is the pitching coach at FAU. You can follow him on Twitter at David Kopp, DAVID, KOPP _, on Twitter. He's a great follow. Even though you don't post that often, but you do sometimes.
I just do more for, I know a lot of recruits follow me in baseball, but it's funny because somebody told me I need to post more. I think social media nowadays it's basically, it's life.
It's how we connect.
It's how we connect. That's how I reached out to you, right?
Yeah.
I reached out to you
great.
With social media, and I'm gonna get better with it. I'm gonna get better. I post a lot of stuff about our program, and that's kind of where my Twitter alliance lies. And you also got to be careful what you post on there too, because everything could be taken out of context.
Right.
But I will be on that.
I appreciate it. Shout out to FAU while we're at it.
Yeah, FAU. Go out.
All right, man. Thank you again. We'll definitely do it soon, and good luck with your next season.
Okay. Thank you.
my thanks to a friend of the program, David Kopp. Had a lot of fun interviewing him. A lot of energy. Hope you guys got something out of that. It's cool to track down a professional baseball player that I know, and we never played in the minors together. We played on two separate teams that had nothing to do with the minors, so it was really cool to reconnect with him. As always, you can follow me on social media at Too Tall Sports Podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review where you can, whether it's a YouTube channel or Apple Podcasts. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Amazon Music. I'm everywhere. Just subscribe, rate, and review where you can. That'd be awesome. Thank you again. If you'd like to email the show, it's tootallsportspodcast@gmail.com. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you again for another great episode. Thanks.